All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Lynn Thomas, co-founder of Arenas for Change, and I'm so excited to have another behind the scenes live conversation today. And this one is behind the scenes of the laws of nature and facilitating with horses with an incredible guest, Amanda Held. And before we bring her on, I want to first introduce you guys to another Amanda, or another member of our Arch co-creators team, Amanda Graham. So Amanda, if you want to hop in. Oh, we got both Amandas. That's okay. We can say
it's a double Amanda.
we have Amanda times two. So
Yes.
Anyway, thank you, Amanda. Amanda Graham is helping us behind the scenes with the technology side and with questions and stuff. So we definitely invite you guys to share comments, share questions along the conversation, and Amanda will be helping us monitor those and bringing those in. So thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Now we'll have our other Amanda.
So Amanda's.
It's a good name, Amanda. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm so excited. So, Amanda and I met, I don't know how long it's been now. Well, I guess we met a long time ago, but I didn't really know you. we met back in our days of Egala, but now, we started Arenas for Change in 2021. And I also co-founded Horses for Mental Health. And we gave Horses for Mental Health gave a prize award for the best film submission with a mental health message to the Equine Film and Arts Festival. And Amanda's film with HOOVES, her program HOOVES, the trailer for the documentary is what was chosen. And so we met at the film festival, and I met you and your husband, Justin. And it was like, we just really connected. I'm in awe of the work that you guys do and all the incredible things that I keep learning from our conversations. And so since then, we've become friends and our lives keep interconnecting. And you have my Mustang milkshake at your farm and dog Luke. I mean, it's just a whole long story. But I am so excited for this conversation because this is something I have found so fascinating. So thank you for joining us on our Arch Live. And Amanda, would you be okay to share a little bit about you and HOOVES, your program HOOVES and Equine Wisdom Institute, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for hosting this. I'm equally as excited, and of course, always pay homage to the ways that what you've done has shaped my life. I certainly wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't found your work in Egala in the early days. And so always just full of gratitude for that. Today, I am running two different programs. HOOVES, or Healing of Our Veterans Equine Services, provides 5-day healing intensives for veterans nationwide. And we do that at our farm and sanctuary here in Northwest Ohio. And the other company that I'm running is called the Equine Wisdom Institute. And so HOOVES has been kind of the breeding ground for the work that I teach today. And as I've stewarded this work and learned more and saw how effective it was, I started the Institute because other people were asking me how I was getting these results that seemed to be so profound. So now I'm running HOOVES and I'm sharing the laws of nature, which have been really instrumental in the work that we do with horses.
Yeah. And first of all, it's amazing. Congratulations on all you've created and built and the incredible program with veterans, with HOOVES, and with what you're doing with Equine Wisdom Institute. And I started learning about the laws of nature and principles of the universe from you. And I was just like, this is mind-blowing. This is so amazing. And you start seeing it, and there's so much depth to it. And also how it can impact our work, incorporating horses and nature with clients. And so I'm so excited to dive into what this is all about, what they are. And I know there's actually a lot of them. We could talk for hours and hours. So we're going to be just happy to get this within our 1 hour time limit. But yeah, so we're not going to be covering all the laws of nature, but I'll be interested to hear which ones you chose and why too. So do you want to go ahead and get us started on some of the things you would like to share?
Yes, I would love to get us started. And there are many laws and principles and There's even clauses to the laws, and someday I'll write a book. But for today, I wanted to look at the audience and what laws I felt were most specific to equine facilitation and connecting with our equine partners. But before I get into the specific laws, I just want to give an overview because our guests might be wondering, well, what the heck are laws of nature? So
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Where do they come from, and who decided these are the laws?
where do they come from? And I think it's interesting because how we mostly use laws of nature and universal principles is in the realm of physics, right? So there's a lot of laws in physics, there's quantum physics, and those are very scientifically backed and proven laws, right? That are not, we can always challenge them, but there are a lot of hard evidence. Then we get over to metaphysics, and a lot of people are like, well, we can't really prove metaphysics, and I believe that that's also not true, but there hasn't been a lot of research out there proving metaphysics. But the question, and I always start with a question. So the question I always am asking myself and I'm asking others is, do you believe that we're separate from our environment? Because if you believe that we are separate from our environment, then you can very easily contest the laws of nature. But if you don't believe that we're separate from the environment, then there's really not a lot to contest there, because we are, in fact, a part of nature. So if these laws can be proven physically in quantum physics and just regular physics, then why would they not apply to us as humans? Because we're a system, we're connected to nature, and we're living on this amazing planet that is, I believe, speaking to us all the time. And so when I look at the laws of nature, the first thing that I look at are systems. And so if you don't believe that you're separate from your environment, then what that means, or what I've observed, is that the laws of nature exist, they're very real, and they govern your life. And when you understand the laws, what happens is you can start to make sense of things that maybe haven't made sense to you in the past. And I think that the equine work is phenomenal. I think that horses can move and change and help people heal themselves, even without words, right? Even without curriculum, even without these concepts. The horses are also, a part of nature and a part of a system, and they're doing a lot of things for us on a energetic level. But I have found that when you know the laws and you understand the laws, then working with the horses helps you gain clarity so much faster. And the horses are already in tune with the laws. And when they discover that you're in tune with the laws as well, man, do they start talking. I was actually just on the phone earlier with one of my students. She had some questions, and she said, man, once I learned this paradigm, my horses won't shut up, and they're saying so much all the time. So they have figured out I know how to listen now. And wow, it's just crazy. So the laws exist, they govern our lives, and they really give us the opportunity to go from being a victim of our history to a master of our destiny. And I know that we talk a lot of religions, and just a lot of people in general talk about having faith. And faith is such a great thing to have, right? The Bible says faith the size of a mustard seed can move mountains. But we have different realms or areas of life, right? So there is a spiritual area of life. There's also a mental area of life. There's also a biological area of life. And if we aren't making decisions by considering all of these areas of life, then we're missing pieces, right? So I believe the laws just really help you take a holistic view and understand that things are transmutable. And I'll explain that a little bit further momentarily. But if you want to learn more about the laws of nature, you can check out Hermetic Principles. Those are kind of the 7 main laws of nature. But really, if you just Google laws of nature, a lot of information will come up. The first law that I want to talk about is the law of vibration. So the law of vibration states that everything is in motion. And if, according to quantum physics, everything is waves and particles, I'm waves and particles, my shirt's waves and particles, my table, my laptop. If we pare that down, that concept down to the most finite level, if we're all waves and particles, we have proven scientifically that waves and particles do respond to vibration. And my biggest challenge over the next 45 minutes that we have is being concise and effective. But if we can go into this conversation with the concept that everything is vibration and waves and particles and vibration influences, right? And so I believe in the research that I've done and the work that I teach that our feelings or our emotions are the catalyst to vibrate the waves and particles that are constantly communicating with our environment. So everything is a vibration, and through the law of attraction, which I do believe has been grossly misinterpreted and overused in the mainstream, but is really a law and certainly has validity to it when you really explore it, we resonate, right? And that resonance goes out and it's received by the environment. And if horses are playing into this law of resonance, and the law of resonance says when 2 systems vibrate at similar frequencies, one can amplify the vibration of the other. And I think from a scientific standpoint, like Heart Math Institute has done a phenomenal job of really, heart rate variability, resonance, so on and so forth. But the law of resonance also states that you will attract and amplify what you are in resonance with. So if your day-to-day emotions are lower vibrating emotions, which shame and guilt are the lowest vibrating emotions, when we get to about 200, if you look at Dr. David Hawkins, he has Hawkins scale of emotion, right? So he's put a vibrational number to all these emotions. But when we get to courage, that's when we start vibrating at 200. And so if we're vibrating at anything lower than 200, we're actually sucking energy from our environment. We're taking energy out, and I like to say, and this is not a judgment, it's an observation, that we're like little black holes. And everywhere we go, we're sucking energy from the environment. When we get to 200, that's neutral, and that's courage. We're not taking energy, we're not giving energy, we're just kind of neutral. Anything above 200 is then we're emanating energy back into our environment. And I
think people do say that, when you feel drained around certain people that might be carrying different emotions. I mean, okay, so yeah, I really sorry, I interrupted her a little bit.
that's perfect.
This is one of these talks that you guys probably want a pad of paper and a pen because there's so much information and it's so deep. So the law of vibration, and then you brought up the law of resonance and the emotions, and so we can get more into both of those. But so the emotions, I found that so interesting that emotions carry different vibrations. And so the ones under 2, which you said are shame and guilt, or what did you say? Under 200,
but shame and guilt are the lowest vibrating emotions. They vibrated about 20 to 30. And it goes up to 900 in Dr. Hawkins' scale. But actually, there's been additional research done because enlightenment, according to Dr. Hawkins, was the highest vibrating emotion that you could be in. And that has actually been disproven. And authenticity has now been proven to be the highest vibrating emotion. And it vibrates, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's something like 40 times higher than enlightenment.
Oh, wow.
Which also is going to play into what I'm going to share in a moment. So, did you have any more questions on?
No, except for I'm guessing you'll share more about what the law of resonance means, because you've brought in the law of vibration and then the law of resonance. Okay. So
yes. So, and I think the law of vibration and the law of resonance are the two most important laws for us as equine facilitators, because the horses are having an entire conversation with us, right? And we know, like, from the horse behavior standpoint, we know what's going on. From the mirror neuron standpoint, like where they're reading our mirror neurons, it's their survival instinct, right? So we know all of these biological things, but I always challenge people to take it a layer deeper than that. And I'm working on some pretty big research right now that I don't want to speak to because I haven't proven or disproven yet, but it has to do with energy, and this is all in the energetic realm. But I like to, and I know there is so much opinion right now on where the horses stand ethically in the work that we do. And so I want to bring in these two laws because I think that first and foremost, if we're not leading with curiosity, that we've really missed the mark, right? So I think in all of this, curiosity is paramount, and not the type of curiosity. We were actually talking about this on my group call this morning, but not the type of curiosity to where you're curious about things that are going to fit your agenda, or that you're curious about things that are going to prove what you already think, but truly like a non-biased curiosity and a willingness to be open and learn. And I'll get into that with the law of polarity, but really approaching this with curiosity, I believe is paramount. But I want you to think about a time that you've either had a client or even just a friend call you on the phone, and they've had something challenging happen in their life, and they vent and vent and vent and vent. They don't really want your opinion, or they don't want to take any advice, or they don't want help. They don't really want to change their situation. They just want to dump it out on you, right? And think about how that feels when you get off the phone with them. Like, are you just like, oh my gosh, I just need a nap, right? It takes your energy. But then I want you to think about a time that somebody's called you and they're struggling, but they want to get through it. And you've been able to ask questions or say something that's created a shift in their perspective and given them something to go back and work on to change their situation. And think about how you feel when you get off the phone with that conversation. It's like energizing. You're like, yeah, I was able to help. Like, this is great. You don't feel like you need a nap. And that's really where the law of vibration and the law of resonance play in. And it plays into our horses as well. So if you are having clients, if you have set up a type of program where people come out and they pet the horses and they talk about their problems, and there's no shift in perspective, there's no shift in emotion, then what they've done is they've, sucked the energy from your horses, and probably you as a facilitator, and from your environment, from your farm, from the trees and the grass and everything that's present, right? If we're all connected, if we're not separate from our environment. But if your client has come out and they've gone through a process that has created a shift in how they're feeling, it has raised their vibration, that can actually give energy back to your horses and back to you and back to your environment. So I think it goes both ways. And I think it's a piece that's not really considered or talked about a lot, is the integration of our clients. Yes, clients' heavy emotions can certainly take from our horses, but the shift in perspective and the shift of emotion can actually give back and contribute to our horses. So it's not always necessarily about the process. It's about the shift, and then it's about the energy that's left at the end of the session. And I believe that as long as your horses are having choice in participating in the session or not, that, they can be used regularly and frequently if they're getting something back from the client. If they're not getting anything back from the client, they're going to find, that's when illness is going to start to show up, or shifts in behavior in your horses. So, do you have any questions on that? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it's a neat thought about how just our beingness in the space is giving, or maybe you've mentioned sucking the energy, or giving. Now, having said that, what I appreciate is what you're saying is that the horses have choice. And of course, we have choice as facilitators if we're going to work with certain people. I guess that doesn't mean, though, that we must make sure that we're only ever, it's not really possible to only ever be giving energy versus taking energy, right? How do you kind of handle that? Because obviously there's going to be time that we're draining just by humanity. We're draining ourselves, we're draining other people. It's just part of humanity. So I guess how do you kind of balance that?
And that's a great question. Actually, thank you for asking that, because, it's true. And when I'm teaching in my facilitation model, I tell people, listen, and like I said, it's not a judgment, it's an observation, because we're all little black holes at some point in time.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's inevitable, right? Because we have a range of emotions, and I don't believe that we would be equipped with these emotions if we weren't meant to have them, and if they didn't serve in some type of way. So every person in their lifetime is going to enter into those states. Mm-hmm. I also like to use, this is not a law, but it's a rule that is very helpful when we're working within the laws, but it's the law of 80-20, or the 80-20 rule, right? So we can handle pretty well challenges, as long as it's 20% of the time. So if 80% of your clients are not integrating, that's going to bring a lot of heavy challenge to you and to your horses. But if the majority of your clients are integrating and one or two doesn't that week, then, there's room and space for that. Now, there's also other things that we can do energetically to help our horses. And I teach a whole module on this in my program, but what can we do if a client doesn't integrate? What can we do for the horse? What can we do for ourselves? So I love to bring in breath work. I believe that our breath is really the only thing that we can control in our lives, aside from, what's in our head. But even sometimes we have trouble controlling that, right? So I will do breath work with my horses, and I will do clearing. I also bring in bentonite clay, essential oils. So I have a whole protocol that I'll do for my horses when clients don't integrate. But the reality is that, yes, not all of your clients are going to integrate. But there are other things you can do to help your horses. But realistically, if it's happening over more than 20% of the time, or with more than 20% of your clients, you're probably going to see some effects in yourself and in your horses, mentally, physically, or emotionally.
Yeah. And I was thinking what kind of hit me a little hard too is, as a facilitator, sometimes when, I wish I would have done this better. I wish we beat ourselves up. Maybe we feel some guilt and potentially shame, and maybe how we facilitated, or did I do enough? And just even that, I'm just realizing when we get ourselves in that place, we're bringing in that kind of vibration. And so I guess it was just kind of a more enlightenment for me of just how we ourselves don't do our best. Obviously, again, it's human nature, but also to be okay, what do I need to do to shift out of feeling guilty for maybe, or I'm not knowing enough or whatever, to we're here, we're in this experience together, we're facing a challenge together.
Absolutely.
In art, we talk about lighthearted humility, having grace for ourselves and stuff. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that as facilitators, even our own, what we're bringing into the session is impacting it all too.
Absolutely. Absolutely it is. And thank you for that. No, it's a great awareness, and also a great segue into the next law that I wanted to talk about, on our call. How perfect. So the next law that can really help us is the law of polarity. And so it can be easy when you're first learning the laws, or it can be easy when you are trying to work within the laws, or when you're placing judgment on yourself or others, to start to feel a little bit polarized, like there's more positive than negative, or more risk than reward, or more drawback than benefits. So I want to bring in the law of polarity, but I also feel like before I do that, I do need to touch on the law of balance. And the law of balance is a really big law. So the law of balance actually states that the earth is always in perfect balance. And so what we believe in our teachings, and what I personally believe, is that nothing is actually ever out of balance except for our perspectives. And I can understand and respect that. I know the first time I heard that, I was like, what? Like, that's crazy. There's plenty of things in this world that are not balanced. But the thing that I love about the laws is our opportunity to find so much hard evidence that after time, I believe it becomes a lot easier to believe in these laws because of how they show up. They show up in systems and they show up everywhere. And I actually had a veteran come through our intensive last week, and I have this happen so frequently, where he came up to me at the end of every day and he said to me, like, Amanda, I feel like you are just talking specifically to me. Like, everything that you're saying, I feel like is completely applies to my entire life. And a lot of people feel that way. In fact, most people feel that way when they go through this curriculum, not because I am talking to specifically them, but because I'm talking to systems, because these laws exist and they're in everybody's life. So as they're being taught, they can be applied so easily because they're human systems, and they're nature systems, and they're world systems. And so I feel like what happens so often is that our perspectives get tunnel vision. And then we really live in this right, wrong, good, bad perspective. And from the right, wrong, good, bad perspective, there is generally, pride or shame or pedestal or pit, and, self-righteous, self-wrongness. And so we say, it's a common saying, that you can't heal in the same environment in which you were harmed. And I don't know if you can hear the jets. They're flying over. So I apologize if there's background noise. I live next to the fighter wing, and they fly every day. And there's nothing.
It was fine. It's not, I could hear it, but it's not bad. So,
Okay,
yeah.
super. So the laws of nature exist in the cause and effect perspective. And in the cause and effect perspective, there is no right, wrong, good, or bad. There's just cause and effect. And I'm certainly not saying that people should just go around living their whole life thinking that nothing's good or bad. Not my point. However, it's helpful when we're doing any type of self-work or healing work to come out of the good, bad perspective, which is where we were harmed, into the cause and effect perspective, because that's where we can gain wisdom. And that's where these laws will show us that nothing in our life is actually missing. We just haven't seen it in the form that it's in. So we're typically, when we feel like things are missing in our life, it's just because we're judging the form, right? And so, so we have the law of balance, which states everything is in balance except for our perspective. It's the only thing that's ever out of balance. And so when we can balance our perspective, we can actually balance our brain chemistry, we can balance our emotions, and we can balance our vibration. And so we always have the opportunity through the law of polarity and the law of balance to bring in the other side and gain a holistic perspective. And I love, that is a foundational component of the ARCH model, is, okay, so here's the story, but what would the opposite of the story be, right?
Mhm.
So in essence, you guys are using the law of polarity very effectively and getting effective results from it because the opposite always exists. And the law of polarity states that um, everything is on a spectrum, right? Hot and cold are simply different spectrums of temperature. And you can find a spectrum in everything in life because everything has an opposite and there are varying degrees. But a lot of times, what people think or perceive is that just because something was one way at one point, it should always be that way. Just because I showed up one way at one time, I'm obligated to always be this way. Just because this person treated me this way at one time, it should always be this way. But that also brings in the natural law of rhythm. So everything, according to the law of rhythm, ebbs and flows. So things are constantly balancing themselves out. And a lot of times when our environment is overriding and balancing our lives out, it can really feel like things are happening to us. And so when we can actually see, okay, so this happened and there are drawbacks to it, but are there benefits to it as well? Because according to the law of polarity, the opposite must exist to the same degree in every moment. So that's one way that we can use the law of polarity to help us, especially if we're having any judgments on ourselves as facilitators, judgments on our clients, which happens just realistically. We're all humans. Judgments on the horses. If I have created a belief about what my horse is getting or not getting or doing or not doing, and I haven't explored, well, what if the opposite were true? Then I have an incomplete picture. And I'm not observing the law of balance and I'm not observing the law of polarity. And therefore, I'm going to have a perspective that's going to cause discomfort in my body. And even that's not right, wrong, good, or bad. It just is. But I love that understanding the laws and looking at everything from a holistic perspective helps empower us to be conscious creators of our life and make choices and decide. So I don't want to do this, or I want to do this with my horse because this is the outcome. This is the benefit. Okay, but what's the drawback of that? Because if there's a benefit to something, there must be a drawback. And if something happens and I perceive it as a drawback, there has to be a benefit. So if I'm saying I should have done this or I should have done that with my client or I missed this opportunity, then I can go in and say, well, what was the benefit of this to the client of this actually playing out the way it did? What is the benefit to me that this played out exactly as it did? Because if we're all vibration and the laws exist and they govern our life, then we're led with synchronicity and things don't have to be right, wrong, good, or bad anymore. They can just be moments in time that provide feedback. And if we can take it as feedback, then we can gain wisdom from it instead of creating negative emotions. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I love this law of polarity, something that I think about a lot since I learned this from you. And just the whole thing about, I love, in fact, like you said, one of the most powerful things I think in sessions, facilitating sessions, is keeping the perspective of opposites, like you were saying. Opposites are where transformation lies. And what's the in between of those opposites as well. And so what I find really interesting too of what you shared is the opposite is always going to be present to the same degree of what your perception is of what's happening here now. And kind of keeping them out because like, wow, I love this horse so much. And it's like, oh my gosh, what might the opposite be? which is hard to look at. It's like, okay, we might be in that sunshine side and we don't want to look at the shadow side, or, people use that terminology and vice versa. But anyway, the concept of that, it's always present to the same degree, is very interesting to me. And it's really affected me, because it's like, okay, I'm really feeling strongly this way. I'm really focused this way with my client, or I'm really focused this way with my horse. Okay, what's the opposite? And what am I maybe not seeing? What am I not seeing? And that's one of the things we talk about in Arch. What am I, hopefully with the Arch lens, the story lens, and now adding in the laws of nature, it's like, okay, what am I not seeing? What am I not hearing? And we start recognizing, acknowledging things that we may not normally be acknowledging. So I don't know. I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about the whole, it comes in equal balance, and paying attention to this law of polarity, how maybe an example of how you've used it with clients. And
Yes, absolutely. And it's so relevant. And this is, I know I haven't brought the horses into this conversation a ton yet, but I've kind of felt like I needed to set the framework. But yes. And I do just want to say, like, when I joined Arch and I started to learn the model, I was just like, oh my gosh, they're already incorporating so many of the laws of nature, without calling it, excuse me, the laws of nature. So there are a lot of principles that are already being done. And there's a lot of principles that people are naturally doing every day in their life, because we're governed by the laws. So we're in a system. I feel like we're almost in this like vacuum where the laws are governing our entire, existence and our lifetime. We just don't know that, and we don't know how to recognize them. So once you learn the laws and then you look at your life, it's really easy to pick them out. But as we delve a little bit further into the law of polarity and how it might show up, I want to talk about how it just shows up in horses outside of human influence, right? So if we observe horses in their natural setting, and I know that when they're held in captivity, that there's a lot of influencing factors to that. But in nature, in the wild, when we look at how horses are, science have proven that they're self-organizing. So we talk a lot about this hierarchy of alpha, and they're proving that actually isn't the case in the wild, right? Herds are together and they're a container, they're a unit, and they're very self-organizing. But when one of the horses in the herd polarizes in a behavior, oftentimes you'll see another horse step in with the opposite behavior to the same degree. And I observe this frequently in my sessions, because there's another law, which I will not go deeply into, but I think it's important for what we're talking about now, which is the law of transmutation of energy. And so the law of transmutation of energy is built upon the law of conservation of energy. And the law of conservation of energy states that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. So there's a finite amount of energy, and we'll never have more and we'll never have less. But through the law of transmutation of energy, energy can change form, right? So a solid can turn to a liquid, snow can turn into rain when the law of polarity is brought into it, right? So the law of polarity really affects this. So we can transmute energy. We can have a banana and the energy is in the form of a banana, and then we can eat the banana and that becomes fuel for our body that we can then go for a run and even transmutate that to sweat, right? So we're always transmutating energy. And so through the law of resonance and the law of vibration and the law of balance and the law of conservation of energy, everything in existence is a container. And I hope I'm not going too deep, but I really don't know how to say this anymore. I've simplified this as much as I can, but I like to think about it. Everything is in a container, right? So according to the conservation law, there's a finite amount of energy, and that is all the energy in the universe. And everything in between is a container all the way down to a cellular level, right? So one particle is a container. And then when two particles get together, there's another container. And when a body gets together, there's a container. And then when two people are together in a family, in a herd, in a organization, right? And all of these containers, every container has a resonance. Every container has a frequency. So when two containers come together, and this is where it gets really interesting, is that those traits and characteristics will integrate and balance. And so if there was a polarity over here, then that's going to attract the opposite over here, because that's how balance is created. And it happens so frequently. And most of my facilitation is not done with one horse and one person. It's mostly with groups of horses and herd, or groups of people and herds of horses. And so a lot of times I'll notice, in session, like if one person gets elevated in one emotion, I'm already looking for it, right? I'm like, okay, where's the opposite emotion, right? So if somebody is shut down over here, I will see somebody overexpress over here, or if the client is shut down over here, the horse will be overexpressive to the same degree. So we can always find polarities, but it requires us to be open to the form in which they're showing up. And so one of the things that we incorporate to help people find balance and work within the law of polarity is we incorporate the 7 areas of life. So there's spiritual, mental, vocational, financial, social, physical, and family. And so maybe sometimes we're really polarized in one area, and then we'll be lacking in the opposite area to the same degree, right? So if you've ever met somebody that's like super, 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 super intelligent, you're like, man, this might be like the smartest person I've ever known. How are their social skills? Probably not great, right? Because we're polarizing in the mental, and that's taking from the social, right? And so as you go through the areas of life, anywhere that you can find a polarity, you can find the opposite. But, maybe if I'm polarized physically, then I'm not going to be polarized to the opposite physically, but maybe it'll be spiritually, right? Maybe I'm very consumed with my physical appearance, and maybe I have no spirituality. So I think, again, growing your perspective or broadening your perspective as much as you possibly can will help you better implement and see how these laws are actually in effect. And I want to bring in one last law, and I don't think I included it in the advertisement for this talk, but it's a really important law, and it's the law of correspondence. And so the law of correspondence states, as above, so below, as within, so without. It's the law that proves or connects the dots that we are not separate from our environment. And I know there's a whole thing, which I will not go into, about horses being a mirror for people, right? And some people believe they're a mirror, and some people think we should never call them a mirror. And, my viewpoint on everything is always it depends. But I like to use the terminology that the horse will reflect the life inside of the human. And that is actually proven through the law of correspondence. But, your car can reflect the life inside of you. I always tell people, when your car's check engine light comes on, check in with yourself, right? And so it's not just horses, it's everything in your environment, your trees, your grass, your house, like everything is constantly giving you information about what's going on inside of you. And that is not escapable. And we can put labels and our own perspectives and right, wrong, good or bad that all day long. But the reality is that it exists, and we have the opportunity to judge it, or we have the opportunity to be curious about it. We have the opportunity to consider it from a very holistic standpoint and say, okay, what does this mean spiritually? And what does this mean mentally? And what does this mean physically? So at the end of the day, I really believe that the laws just do a really good job of broadening our perspective and taking out our blind spots so that we can get the holistic perspective. And I think one of the amazing things that exists, I'll say, I don't know if it's because of or in spite of or in addition to the laws of nature, is our own free will as people. And I've picked up this phrase over the years, and I say it jokingly and seriously at the same time, but if we're damned if we're damned if we do and we're damned if we don't, we might as well do what we want. And I've come to that conclusion, and not from a way of inconsideration, but if there's an equal amount of benefits and drawbacks, if there's an equal amount of support and challenge according to these laws of nature, then what that allows me to do is have my individuality and say, but what do I want? And I think that shows up most importantly for us as facilitators in helping our clients and keeping our own personal biases and projections out of our sessions. Because if your focus, instead of trying to see what your client needs and facilitate an experience that helps them get the wisdom that you think that they should have based on your perspective, it really allows you to go into a session with infinite possibilities. And instead of trying to get your client a result, your focus can be on how many perspectives can I help my client have from this situation so that they can see all sides and then they get to decide. And that's really so beautifully constructed in the ARCH framework, which is why I just love this model so much. It really does support all the laws of nature. But I think, if we're not deciding, then someone is deciding for us. And the greatest gift I believe that we can give people is the confidence in themselves to decide, whatever that is.
Oh, absolutely. With an ARCH lingo, yeah, we believe our clients, they're the authors. And I love how you have framed this with just providing this space and opportunity for multiple perspectives to be explored, discovered. And we don't know which direction or way the clients want to write their story, which way they want to take it. And I love too, I was thinking as you're talking about the containers and we talk about, we're all bringing in our different stories. We have, and we come together. So we all are in our own containers, and then we come together in this session or this training or something. And now we've created this container, and there's this story, the story of this container. And the idea of looking at things as stories is to help with, like you're saying, the law of cause and effect. No, is it? What is that called? Was it the law of
the law of correspondence?
The law of correspondence. Okay. Yeah, it's not good or bad. It's just like, okay, this horse has moved away now. This fly has entered into the space. Like, there's not a good or bad. It's just like, this has happened, and now the whole story has changed because of this. We talk about the beauty of nature is it's always moving. There's always movement in nature. And because of that, there's always changes and happening. And because of that's why no matter what, our clients, when we're in a natural environment like this, things are happening, shifts are happening, whether we said a word or not, because the stories are shifting and changing, because there's always movement in nature. The wind blows, the sound of a leaf rustling, all of that is impacting this experience that we're having together. And now we just get to be curious. Like, that's what I hear you saying, just like, and now we just get to be curious and see, where is this going to go? Where is this going to unfold? But I feel like what you're saying, the stuckness is about remaining polarized in one perspective. That's what that's some of the stuff I'm taking.
Thank you. No, you put a bow on that so nicely. You have such a gift to listen to people and share back what they said with such eloquence. So thank you. And I just realized that Amanda a while ago had said, what do you mean by integration? So I do just want to touch on that because I think it'll put a nice bow on this. So we have an integration when we can see both sides equally. That's an integration. So when I've asked the question, what are the benefits of the negative and what are the drawbacks of the positive, and I can get myself into a perspective where I can see both sides equally, then I can make a decision from my heart and not a decision because I put something on a pedestal and something in a pit, right? Like I can give a really quick example of that. So when we bought our farm here, our sanctuary, it was like my dream, right? And so I really tried not to have it on a pedestal, but it's hard to not have your dream on a pedestal to a degree, right? And so when we first moved in, we were leasing, and the owner tried to pull the contract and get us out. And I thought I was going to lose everything. And because I believed or perceived that there would be more loss or more pain in losing the place and more pleasure in keeping it, I actually sat down and I wrote down 100 benefits of losing the farm, of rehoming all of my horses, and dissolving my life as I knew it. And to be honest with you, by the time I got to the 100th benefit, I was like, oh, do I really want to be doing this? But what that allowed me to do, and it's not, we say the work is simple, it's never easy. But what that allowed me to do is go into that strategic course of action on how we were going to move forward, not being governed by my emotions, right? Because the moment I put something on a pedestal, the moment I say, this is going to bring me more reward than risk, more support than challenge, more pleasure than pain, I've developed an attachment to it. And that now governs every decision I make. And it might sound a little crazy or extreme, but in a lot of situations, I try to do in all situations in my life that are important to find an equal amount of benefits and drawbacks to that thing, because, I was able to look at both sides and then say, what do I really want to do here? Do I want to move on from this? Do I want to let this go? And when I was able to consider both sides, then I made a decision from an integrated state where I was like, no, this is actually what I want to do. But if it doesn't work out, I'm still going to be okay. And that allows us, and I have a whole thing on this, to stay in our prefrontal cortex or our strategic mind so that we're making decisions that are best for us and for our life without being governed by the fear of loss of it. So I guess that's how you can use it in the future. And then how you can use it in the past is, if I say, well, this shouldn't have happened, this was a bad thing. Okay, well, I never want to like denounce or get rid of the pain or minimize that the thing that happened was painful. But also, what did it give you? What's that other side? And the more things you can find that challenging situation gave you, the more balanced your memory of it will be, and the less it's going to bring up negative emotions in your body. And then at the end, when you've balanced both things, then it's like, well, I get to decide how I feel about this. I don't have to feel this way because somebody told me this is how I should feel about it. I get to feel this way because I choose to feel this way. And even if I choose to feel unpleasant emotions about what happened, I have decided. And the vibration of certainty, I believe, is the greatest gift that we can give to our nervous system and also our horses, right? Because we know that the horses are also responding to our nervous system. And when we're integrated and balanced, we're like a magnet. Our horses want to be all over us, or even our clients, right? Think about when your client gets honest and they get certain, even if they're not happy emotions, the horses move. They gravitate towards that. So if that's a space that we can get people, and I think we're remiss if we think that by the end of our sessions, clients should be happy. That's never my goal. My goal for every client that walks out of my arena is that they made a choice, a conscious choice for themselves, by themselves, about their life, because they were able to consider all sides of an opportunity or challenge.
Well, and we talk about an arch about the different emotional levels of distance with being the character. We're a character in our stories. And that's when we're just in it, we're feeling it, we're experiencing it. And the viewer, we have a little step back and then further step back. A lot of what you're sharing here about really being able to kind of step back and look at, well, wait, what's the other side, would be something we would do in a writer's room kind of concept where we're talking as an author, story editor kind of concept, but that's where it's like, let's take a step back and kind of better understand the elements of this story that's happening. How do you balance that though with, there is a time to just be and feel like, if I'm in it and I'm feeling upset, or say our clients are and they're feeling sad or they're feeling pain, there's a time to feel that too, right? Versus step back and look at the other side, right? Like, or how do you balance that too with your
Yes,
client and yourself?
there absolutely is. And I actually, I made a diagram and a explanation for that. It's basically a diagram and explanation of how to move through challenge and how we can implement all these laws every time we face a challenge, right? So yes, we have to feel it to heal it, right? That's scientifically proven. So I always like to share the tools and the information in the curriculum portion of what I teach with people preventatively, because if we put it into a practice, then we are certainly, it's easier for us to use. But the laws of nature are never meant to be used to avoid pain. And that's something that I share with my facilitators. I share with the clients, anyone that I'm teaching, is the point of doing this work is never to stop experiencing pain. It's to put the power in our hands and how we're going to choose to feel about things, right? But yeah, if somebody says something hurtful to you, you should feel horrible. You should feel exactly how you feel, if that's how you feel. And so we teach people how to somatically sit with feelings, right? Sitting in that. So if something comes up and you're like, yeah, that's really upsetting to me. And we talk about this a lot in my training as well, of negotiating people out of their feelings or rescuing or interrupting their process, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there certainly is a time and space for that. And the horses love it. And your horse, Lynn, especially, Milkshake, really has shown the gift of sitting with people in their ick. You know, he has a very strategic way of pushing people till they pop. And then when they do pop, because maybe he hasn't cooperated or done what they were trying to get him to do, the way that he stands with them and allows them to express. I mean, you know, people have been on the ground, people have been screaming, people have been sobbing, you know, and he loves it. He stands right by, you know, even if some of the other horses are like, I'm not interested in this, he is right there. And, you know, I think we could have a whole nother conversation on how the horses feel about the laws and how they're all different in them. But yes, you know, if we're not creating a space to feel it first, then we're just going to continue to have trapped emotion, and that will actually amplify the law of resonance and amplify the law of vibration. And then we will continue to live in a feedback loop of similar things happening in different situations.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate what you're saying on top of curiosity is choice. And if we as a facilitator are trying to control the outcomes, control the process, of course, the law of polarity would say, well, what's the opposite that we're bringing into the process? So,
well, there's actually, I'll squeak in one last law, and that shows up all the time in facilitation, and that is called the law of heuristic escalation.
Oh, okay.
You
have to spell that one.
Yeah, the law of ERISTIC, the law of heuristic escalation, is essentially chaos theory. So the more order that we try to impose on a system, the more chaos will be created. And chaos, again, the law of heuristic escalation works with the law of polarity. So the chaos will show up to the degree that order was attempted to be created. Now, there is a clause in the law of heuristic escalation that states that the degree of the order imposed will be in direct proportion in timeline to when the chaos shows up. So if an extreme amount of order is imposed on a system, the chaos might not show up immediately. It's going to push out the timeline, but it's still going to show up to the same degree. And it's not escapable.
Well, I know our hour has gone by so fast, as always. And as Susie mentioned, really hope this is recorded. It is, and you guys can access it here on the social Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or it'll be on our YouTube channel. And I know, Amanda, you teach these laws with your clients, right? Like, so they can get that information to start looking at their experiences through the lens of the laws of nature. And if you guys enjoyed this, Amanda, you can go to equinewisdominstitute.com. .org, equinewisdominstitute.org. And you have an amazing community too. That's a free community people can join, that you focus on horsemanship, horses, equine assisted facilitation, the laws of nature. It really is just so much depth, and of course, very philosophical too, but very applicable also. I've seen when people learn these things and they start being able to step back and say, oh yeah, okay, this is what's happening now. Okay. It kind of gives that other, like you said, perspective. So as I know there's been several comments throughout the thing, but that will more been kind of feedback and agreements with what you're saying. Is there anything any other thoughts you'd like to leave us with, or ways to connect with you and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you again for the opportunity. I think the work is important, and the more people understand these laws, the better the world's going to be, and we can continue to create the ripple effect. So yes, there's my group is on school. I do a Tuesday morning chat every week at 9 a.m. Eastern, where we go down some crazy rabbit holes. It's a free community, so if you are interested in joining the community, you can just go to the website, equinewisdom.org, and it will say join our community. It's also in my Facebook page in the description. You can join the community. So if you enjoyed this and you want to learn more, I'd love to invite you. And just thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you for your time, and thank you, Lynn, for this opportunity. And thank you, Amanda, for moderating, even though I talk too much.
Between Amanda and I, we could just go and go. And I love deep philosophical conversations. Also, like I said, very applicable and helps us see things from other. There's so many nuggets. As I always say, Amanda is full of nuggets of wisdom, and there's lots of nuggets. And so I'm glad it's recorded as well. And appreciate all you guys for joining us today and your comments throughout. And we'll love to keep hearing those comments as people watch the recordings. And Amanda Graham, is there anything else on your end to add to our wrapping up?
I think you said it all. There's been a lot of resonance with what you're talking about in the discussion here. And I think some key words around balance and continuing to look at both sides and the many different perspectives are some of the real points that people have resonated with. So thank you all. And thanks for those who joined us. And we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Amanda. We'll have to do it again.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, everyone.